Our speaker tonight is Ms. Bess Ogden. Bess graduated from Dartmouth College with a BA in psychology. After several years of teaching, then as a financial advisor, she worked as manager optician in an optometric practice for 9 years. Bess joined Williams Group as a consultant in 2006. During the week, she thrives on supporting her clients, assisting them in reaching their goals, wherever they may be, boosting production, handling staff issues, bringing on an associate, retiring, you name it. When not at work, you'll find her outside, hiking and backpacking with her husband, Tom. They have called the beautiful California coast their home for 30 years. Welcome, Miss Ogden.
Thank you, Cheryl. I love that introduction, appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. It is a lovely evening here in Northern California. I hope it is where you are as well. And if ever there were a time that it became important that the practice get paid properly for the patient services and products that you're providing, I would say it is now. I'm assuming that you're all in various stages of reopening at this point, and I would also imagine that you're working at something of a reduced capacity as a result of the mandates that you're following in each office. So each patient coming in not only is of course, clinical value to you and community value, but they are production value as well, and that's critical at this point that we pay attention to that. I named this presentation very deliberately, Treasure Hunt. So what I'm going to talk about is essentially an audit process, but not the kind of audit I imagine most of you have done. So I want you to think of it in these terms, treasure hunt. What does that make you think of? It makes you think of a game. It makes you think of a challenge. It makes you think of what are you going to find? You don't know necessarily what you're going to find when you head out on a treasure hunt. It also implies that it's a team activity, at least in the current version of treasure hunt. We're not pirates here, so you know, this is something we do for fun, and we do it as a team at a party or as a bonding experience. So that I want you to keep that frame of mind in front of you as I go through this really unique process of auditing the patient production cycle. It's kind of an interesting shift, but you know what? You're in charge of your frame of mind, you guys. Every one of you can make a choice to take this on as a positive, fun team challenge. So I want you to be making that choice when you bring this back to the practice tomorrow morning and put it into practice. Now we've got the Q&A, as Cheryl mentioned, and I'm looking forward to hearing what questions you have as we move through the presentation. There's also a chat function that you see in your webinar, your GoToWebinar control panel. And you'll have opportunities to respond to my questions throughout the presentation. I counted it up. I have about 8 questions or brainstorms for you all. And you are more than welcome. In fact, I encourage you to share your thoughts when I ask those questions. Let me assure you, there are no wrong answers with these chat questions. It's really a brainstorm, and it's a way for us to engage in this virtual reality that we're in. And I think it'll be more enjoyable and certainly more interactive if you can take that opportunity to just type in a quick response in the chat option in your navigator if you have something to say. And don't worry if you don't, I can certainly give examples if none are coming to mind amongst the group. I think though, with over 100 people here, we should get a few chats in. I'd be surprised if people don't have some ideas that you can share. But before we get into the presentation, my financial disclosure, I don't have any relevant financial relationships to disclose in regards to this presentation. All right, what if you, as a team, as an optometrist, could do the exact same amount of work, meaning you'd see the same amount of patients and you'd perhaps sell the same amount of products or recommend the same additional services, but you'd make more money for the business doing it. Seems like a pretty good deal. I don't know anyone who would not want that to occur. So that's what we're really going to get into here today in the next 45 minutes or so. This is your opportunity, your chance to do the same work, but make more money doing it. Not only does that benefit the business, but as you know, that benefits the entire team. It benefits the patients. It benefits your community. If the business is solid, the patients get better care. The team is more secure at the practice. So there's many more reasons besides just increasing production that we want to maximize the revenue for the work that you're all doing. And I know you're working hard. How are you going to do that? Well, there's probably a couple ideas that come to mind. I'll share the ones that are probably most obvious to everyone. You could do the same work and make more money by raising your fees, both for your services and your products. That would certainly do it. And you know what? There are times that is certainly necessary. From a consultant perspective, that review, that analysis of your fee structure is something that the owner group or doctor should be doing on an annual basis, if not more frequently, depending on what fee schedule we're talking about. So there's one way that you can certainly do the same work but make more money, but that's going to be a pretty hard sell right now in the midst of our global pandemic, where people are, if not struggling financially, are certainly feeling uncertain about the financial future. So there's one way, raise your fees. You could sell more premium services and products. So those of you that are licensed dispensers, certainly anyone in a role of providing products to your patients, you know that your education, your follow through and recommendations from the optometrist will educate the patient to the point where they'll be confident going ahead with a premium product, which in turn could create more revenue for the business as well. You could, if you're an optometrist, you certainly could be exploring wellness screenings or dry eye technology, those sorts of things that would certainly add more revenue per patient, although it certainly takes more chair time as well and more cost. So there's one thing, more premium services and products. The other, of course, is raising the fees. But what about this? What about not doing any of that right at the moment, but instead just plugging the leaks in your practice right now? Where is the money going? Where are there operational mistakes occasionally, or oversights or misunderstandings that you've missed or potentially just haven't addressed yet? That's what we're really going to focus on today, not so much those other valid ways of increasing revenue that I mentioned. Those are fine, but just the same fee structures, the same products, the same services, but we're going to plug the leaks, you guys. If we're going on a treasure hunt, we want a boat that's not going to sink on us. So here we go. I want you to think about it in this term. I did a very thorough revenue analysis audit, like I'm going to describe to you, with one of my clients a year or so ago. And he determined that they were losing about $25 US per patient exam, per full exam, because of mistakes and oversights. And I can almost hear it. I know everyone's muted, but I can hear amongst the group that's listening, it's like, well, that's not our office. Certainly that's not us. But I assure you, this client thought the same thing. He was surprised. He was astounded. I mean, think about it. For a one optometrist full-time practice, you may see 2,000 full exams in a year. I'll just throw out a number, obviously not in March, April, and May, potentially June and July, that you may not see as many as would work out to 2,000 a year. 2020 is kind of a weird year for us, but 2,000 exams at 25 loss per exam. Do the math. It's 50,000 bucks that was lost due to oversights and mistakes. Now, make no mistake there. I'm not saying that every office and every person in the office is ever going to be perfect. That's just unrealistic. Mistakes are going to happen. That's reality. But what if we could recapture some of that $50,000 per year? I'm sure there are things that could be done with that revenue. So I'm going to address the very first question that I know is floating in everyone's minds as you start to listen to this audit idea that I'm presenting. Is this going to cause more work for me or for my team or for my office manager or for my dispensers? It's a good question. I propose that you need to do all the steps that I'm going to talk about anyway. We're just going to do it in a more systematic manner. And we're really going to clarify your focus. And you're going to do it as a team. Is it more work? I know that's a perspective. I would say, I'm going to suggest that you guys do an audit, as I describe it, for 10 patient production cycles 4 times a year or once per quarter, okay? And a patient production cycle is simply this deep analysis from the very start, from the moment you schedule the appointment, all the way through until the last dollar has been collected for that encounter. So 10 of these types of audits done 4 times a year. Each audit process is quite thorough. I think you'll be surprised. I know many of you are thinking like I'm already doing audits in the office, but this is going to be different. I can assure you that. These take at least 20 to 30 minutes per audit. So that's the amount of work that you're investing. But again, this is work that should probably already be done in the office. So I'm going to propose that it's not creating more work. It's just creating more revenue for the same work. We are now to chat opportunity number 1. Here is what I'd like you to do. And that these chat entries I know will go by pretty fast here as you guys enter them. So I'll try to kind of watch them as they go. But I want you to think about plugging the leaks in your office. I want you to think about mistakes or oversights or lost revenue that you discovered in the recent time period. We could go back to the beginning of the year, or even some big doozies that you remember either you did or someone else did that were actually a huge loss to the practice. Here's where I would love for you to open your chat box and throw in, if you would, I'm going to give you a couple seconds here to go ahead and throw in some examples of areas where you've observed revenues being lost. And I'm watching chat. Is anyone going to jump at the opportunity? I'm watching. Not seeing any chats.
Okay, this is Cheryl. People are putting it in the question box. On the right-hand side of your webinar, there's a chat box. So if you try the chat box with your questions.
Perfect. I was going to say, this is a pretty large group to be so quiet, Cheryl. I'm sure someone has an idea there. Great. Sorry about that. Yeah, if you can use the chat. And you know what? If it's not working, we'll just go ahead and I'll give you some examples. I'm looking and seeing if anything can go into chats. Are you seeing anything, Cheryl? I'm not seeing anything coming into chat.
Yeah, they're coming into the question box, so I can read out some of them.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Not enough staff to catch dispensing, patient no-shows, OHIP fee rejections not corrected, office being too busy to help, patients with glasses and losing sales, selling sunglasses, not doing an OCT on the spot when it could be done. People don't see the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. That's okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Those are great examples, and it's really interesting because there's two elements of this that we'll talk about throughout the presentation for the next 30 minutes or so. One is mistakes, and the other, which is more of the type that has been chatted in so far, put in the Q&A, are more of lost opportunities. I think the one was OHIP authorization that wasn't valid, right? That's kind of a mistake. It's a lost revenue because of a mistake. But a lot of them are opportunities, and that's another part of this audit process that's pretty unusual, is not only are you looking for those mistakes or lost revenue for the services you did or the products you sold, but we're also going to look for lost opportunity. And there is no invoice or statement analysis in the world that can show you lost opportunity. Correct? You can't. You're just seeing what happened, not what didn't happen. Like an OCT that could have been done on the spot but wasn't for whatever reason. That's still a lost opportunity. So yes, absolutely. Those are beautiful examples of treasures that we may find along the way here. So how are you actually going to hunt for these treasures? Again, I'm sure that every office here, every representative of every office here does some sort of auditing of at some level. I'd be really surprised if someone was just like, oh yeah, well, we just provide the services and just trust that we're going to get paid everything that we expected to get paid. And that's pretty naive for one thing, and probably not any of you guys because you're all smart. But you could certainly do a situation where you audited every single example of a patient purchase, let's say. So I did want to show you just one example such as that, and make sure that you can see it here. And let's see, I'm going to pull this down here. And let me check my audience view and make sure you see this. Okay. Here we go. Here is an example of a contact lens audit. In fact, this office does more than just the contact lenses. This was just for the month of October last year. And these guys go through every single account and look at the charges and then check and make sure that they were correctly recorded. So we're going through, you can see a couple here where something was billed out as a contact lens, but in fact it wasn't. So that was an operational error, or not necessarily a revenue error. We've got a couple errors where things were billed to perhaps the wrong account number, which doesn't, I mean, yeah, they got the money, but you've perhaps got some irritated patients on your hands if something is billed to the wrong account. You can see that they were going through each and every order for that month. We can see one area here, I know this is hard to read, but just as an example, where the box was ordered as a 12-pack instead of a 6-pack. So in that case, the patient was actually going to have to be refunded because they'd wanted the smaller quantity rather than the larger quantity. This particular office administrator did go on to not only, well, that's a lot of contact lens orders, right? But she also went on to analyze all the optical orders. And you can see here that they billed out 211 jobs for that particular month. And of them, she only found 28 errors. Some are lost revenue, some are lost opportunity, some are errors on materials ordered, etc. But all of them, if you think about it, all of them, even if it's, oh, whoops, wrong material, we need to redo it, doesn't that cost you time and money? That resource of you, the dispenser, having to redo it, even though it doesn't cost you anything perhaps, is costing the business time and costing you time that you could be doing something else. So it's kind of a little different perspective, but again, this particular office has a habit. They have a routine of monthly going through the entire month and auditing to that level. That's a lot of work, and that's very unusual. Okay, it's very unusual. I'm not saying necessarily that this is what I would expect you guys to do. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Now we should be back to the slideshow if all is well in our control world here. And hold on just a sec, let me get back my screen. And we're going to continue forward. Here's the other option that I'm going to propose. So again, remember what I said, 10 patient production cycle audits that are done very deeply, looking for mistakes as well as missed opportunity. 10 done per quarter. That's what I'm going to suggest you do, as opposed to an audit of every single patient that comes through the office. And our map. What is our map going to be? How are we going to find these points where there was lost opportunity or mistakes or oversights? It's really going to be a combination of quite a few things, which is why it takes 20 or 30 minutes per audit. It's a combination of your medical records, it's your lab orders from ophthalmic or contact lens vendors, it's the invoices that you receive, it's also any insurance remittance advices. So this could be OHIP or it could be private insurance companies as well. You're taking all of those bits of information, these points on the map, and you're going to use those as points of analysis. Each one of those little check points there is where you're going to spend a little time. But the first thing you do have to do is create the map, meaning gather together all that information. So think about that brainstorm that Cheryl shared with us earlier, those little points of lost revenue. Those are kind of those little X's on the map that you're going to be looking at, but on a very systematized sort of process. I mentioned this in the beginning. The reason it was named Treasure Hunt is because I need you to take this on as a positive project. It cannot be done from a perspective of critique or of disciplinary action. We're not trying to catch anyone making mistakes. This is a team opportunity to really dig into your patient production cycle and see where there might be patterns. Are there places where there seem to be more mistakes done than you'd expect? Are there certain areas within the practice that seem to be having more mistakes than others? And there's lots of different ways you can utilize this, but it's got to be discovery. And I can't tell you how fun this is to do with a team that really engages with it from that collaborative mindset. And they understand it's safe. You know, that's one thing about your team. If you approach it that way, this is a safe place for people to say, yo, you know what, I made a mistake. That is something I did and I get it. I need more training, or I'll be more careful, or could someone double check me? You know, whatever it is that the problem solving opportunity brings up, you're in a safe environment to do it. And in the best case scenario, your teams will look forward to those audits. They'll look forward to them. They won't dread them. They won't be afraid of getting in trouble. They'll be like, yes, let's do it. Let's see what we can find this time. Let's get it fixed. So you're going to follow the map. and the map is going to be fairly methodical. Again, you're going through a patient production cycle, so you have natural points to begin looking. You've got where the appointment was scheduled in your scheduler. You've got the exam notes. Again, you've got the order entry system, and we're going to go through and examine those clues at each point here. So let's start with the very first one, which is the optometrist. And Cheryl, are you standing by where if people have end up with answers in Q&A, you could share those?
I'm on mute. I'm talking to you and I'm on mute.
What?
I'm just sending a message to everyone just now. I'd like everyone to go to your webinar box, and at the top there's words that say File, Options, View. And if you click on View, make sure there's a checkbox beside the word Chat. Then you should see the chat box. So I'd like people to try that, and if you can find the chat box, send a message to all.
Perfect. I do see that we did have a few people successfully get in there.
I think okay, you're seeing some messages?
I got
Maybe?
one. I think that was previously though, Cheryl. So
okay.
From the previous chat.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if people can see that. If not, we can do it through the question box.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Sure.
And I can just share examples as well, which looking at, we're already at 8:30. How does that happen, you guys? So maybe what I'll do is say this is a chat opportunity. And then if you have a place to each individually jot down some notes for yourself, that may be the way that we go through this. And it's really to prompt your own remembrance of what were we talking about when you look at the presentation notes later on. Because yeah, for some reason it's just not working quite as easily as we'd hoped. So that's fine. We are flexible here in virtual world. So let's start there then. The optometrist point of the patient production cycle. Did that optometrist document all of the professional services performed in the patient encounter record? So there's the first point where you want to take a look. Are there any clues here in the medical record that show that something was done in the exam lane, but for whatever reason, it wasn't finalized as a service provided or a material for that matter? I'll throw it an example that's quite expensive and also not that uncommon. If you're talking about medically necessary contact lenses, oftentimes optometrists will get online or on the horn and talk with a consultant at their medically necessary contact lens vendor and get advice on a particular patient's circumstances or diagnosis. And then they will assist the optometrist in selecting a lens to utilize with that patient. And it's very easy in the process of going through that consultation and taking care of the patient to forget to document that you actually are providing them with a lens. And I know that for some of you, I can't imagine how that would happen, but it does. And I've seen it. And if any of you are involved with medically necessary contact lenses, the purchase and fitting of one of those and not billing it out as a service and product is kind of an expensive leak in the boat, kind of expensive. So there would be an example. Another one that is perhaps a little more subtle, talking about contact lenses, and again, perhaps the optometrist did actually evaluate a contact lens patient's fitting. They went through the analysis, tear film analysis and evaluation, and perhaps chose not to transfer that charge as a courtesy to the patient or just because they didn't feel like it. And I've definitely seen that people can be a little bit hesitant sometimes to charge patients who sometimes feel like their contact lens services really aren't anything. I know, we can all roll our eyes at that, but it's true. You have patients who are like, well, you didn't do anything. Why am I paying for it? When you're refitting in contacts, updating a prescription. So there's a couple examples, and I want everyone to be jotting down, since we don't have the chat function working real smoothly, to jot down ideas here where in your practice, you can imagine or you can remember times that an optometrist did something, but then did not document it and pull it forward. If I'm going to go to the next slide, or did not pull it forward so that it was entered into the patient ledger properly. Okay, now going back, there is a point there where we're talking about the optometrist handing off to the billing support staff at that point. And, you know, there's the one side of it where a service was provided but not documented. And then there's a next point where it was documented, but for some reason did not get over onto the patient ledger properly. And you can imagine if you were just looking at patient ledgers and whether they had paid or not, you would not see this. This clue would be hidden from you. This is a treasure. The service was done in the exam room, but it was not billed to the patient. So I want you to jot down any notes or observations you have or thoughts you have about that you might apply or bring back to your own practice. So now we've got the services and from the exam room transferred hopefully properly and completely onto the patient ledger. There's the first and second spots on our treasure map. The next is what was billed out for the patient in terms of glasses or contacts. Now this one is interesting. So we talked about some lost opportunities, like sunglasses, I think is one that came up, or second pairs, you know, those are lost opportunities that you certainly could see if you're looking at the optometrist's recommendations or treatment plan. There could be stuff there that for whatever reason didn't come over through the dispensary and into the patient fulfillment, right? There's lost opportunity there sometimes. But what was billed out in terms of materials, I'm going to talk about glasses and contacts in this case. And here's the second step. Does what was billed out match what was actually ordered? So in most practice management software systems, there is a financial module which shows the charges, and then there is a separate module within the system where you actually create your orders. And from there, they are submitted to the optical labs. Now, this is really important. Again, we've got a marked spot on our treasure map. It's not just the first order that's placed, okay? Think about your patient base. If you're a dispenser, you certainly know what I'm talking about here. There are patients where you have to redo their glasses or reorder contacts or change a power or, you know, and do something in the order to fix something. There was a misunderstanding or the patient changed their mind or decided to do something that they weren't going to do at first. So what you end up ordering first time may not be what the patient ends up with when the process is done after any redos. And there are, here's your next chat prompt. So I know we're not using chat, but you're gonna be taking notes on this. What kinds of things could happen in a redo that are revenue opportunities or triggers that aren't happening all the time? I'm gonna give you a second to just jot something down or think about it at least. And then I'm gonna give you some examples. 10 seconds of thought. All right. Bess comes in, orders glasses, and I've got progressives in high index and an anti-reflective treatment. I come in and pick them up and I say, Cheryl, I wanted transitions. How come these don't have transitions? I'm sure we talked about that. I need the transitions. And then Cheryl, as the dispenser, is embarrassed, potentially. Of course, you're helpful and you're going to say, absolutely, we can fix that. I'm so sorry, Bess. We'll get that done right away. And then you very promptly run back, resubmit the order to the lab and get them going on that so you can get the absolutely quickest turnaround time. But what didn't happen? I didn't get charged for the upgrade to transitions. it never gets to my invoice. So I put this check redos here because it's very possible with redos that there could be a revenue trigger opportunity that wasn't recognized. And I get it. That's in the heat of the day with the patient staring daggers at you. You messed up, right? I asked for transitions and you didn't do it. All you want as a dispenser is to fix the problem and make the patient happy. And the last thing on your mind at that point is to say, absolutely, Bess, no problem. And that will be an additional $100, please. Like, that's the very last thing that you really want to do, but you have to, because that's a reality. It's a more expensive product that I'm ultimately going to get. So we've now gone through the order spot, looking for clues. The next spot that we're going to look at is, what did the lab or the vendor actually charge you for the products that you ordered? Now, I know you're thinking, at least a few of you are thinking, well, that's not production. That's an expense. Okay, you caught me. It's not exactly a production thing, but are you making more money if they charge you properly versus overcharge you for something? Yeah, of course you are. We're talking bottom line, which is profit. So if they're charging you more than you are supposed to be charged, you gotta catch that. You've got to correct that. Was there a discount that you were supposed to get? Was there a special that they had offered and that they didn't provide to you? Did you forget to ask them for that special that they had offered in your order? Right? A note, second pair discount, make sure that applies to revenue, order number 1, 2, 3, 4. There's things you could have done internally that created a lost revenue opportunity on the vendor side. So that's the next step on the map. You're looking at those optical invoices and making sure that you were charged properly for the product that you ordered, all the way up to the last redo, if there is a redo in there. If there is insurance involved, we add another level of complexity, another little stopping point on our treasure map that we've got to stop and explore and look for clues. Depending on the type of insurance, some are more straightforward than others. I think OHIP is fairly straightforward. I've never billed it, but from what I've understood from clients I've worked with, it's fairly straightforward. Other insurances, not so much. So you've got to understand how you're supposed to be paid and be able to look at that remittance advice and catch the mistakes. They're not perfect. And let's talk about your vendors and any insurance that's involved. Are they motivated to tell you that they made a mistake and didn't charge you or pay enough? The answer is no, in case you were wondering. They are not motivated to catch those mistakes. The only one who is going to catch them, by and large, is someone in your office. And if you don't, oh well, that they're just not motivated, which it only makes sense. That's not their business to catch their mistakes and give you more money. And then obviously the other point here that we've got to look at, that X marks the spot, is, did the patient pay the proper amount at the time they ordered, or at very least at the time of dispense? And hopefully everyone is collecting full payment at the time of order and not waiting to collect at the time of dispense unless that's required for a particular product or patient. So there's another step in that treasure map that you've got to be looking and understanding the clues. So hopefully everyone has a list of points on their map that they're going to start to draw when they get back to the office. Little checklists of things that could have gone awry or opportunities that could have been missed at each point through that patient production cycle. So how are you going to do this thing? I already mentioned this. It is totally doable, you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing your results. So you're going to see my contact information at the end, and I want to see an audit. I'm challenging every office here, I'm sure there's a few of you from the same office, to email me an example of an audit. Just black out the patient information on there and email it to me, because I want to see what you found. And just a little hint here, I'm not looking for perfect audits. I'm looking for the treasures. What did you find? What was a surprise? What was interesting about it? What have you done as a plan of action after you've done those audits? But here's how you're going to start. Let's go through the process, because I know you need a playbook here. What are you going to do? Super simple. So you're going to go back. I would suggest at this point, with the closures and the reopenings and everything, I would suggest you go back to the month of February and look at the patients that you took care of during the month of February and select 10 of them. Now, it can be entirely random. If you really have no idea if there's any patterns in your office, if any one kind of patient versus another, or product versus another has more errors or opportunities for a tighter system, then just do a random selection. Randomize it. Use one of those little apps or something. I don't know. Pull up one from each letter in the, every other letter in the alphabet or something like that. But you're going to pull 10 patient production cycles, and you're going to get all of their invoices and their insurances. You're going to get their medical records. You're going to get all of that together as I just described. Those are your maps, the points on your map. And you're going to get them kind of like in a little packet. And that could be actually a paper packet, depending on how you get all this material, what's easily available to you, or it can be a digital packet, if you will. And that's what you're going to put together. You're going to, again, go through and confirm on the ledger that the services and materials that were actually posted were billed. You're going to do screen captures, you guys. We all have them, snip and snap and whatever they're called. Everyone's got them on their workstations. Just take a little screen capture and save it and make some notes on that. You're going to do the same thing with any insurance. Make notes as you go through it. You're going to look at all the payments and make notes. The make notes, do you notice a little pattern here? I'm going to keep saying that. This is what you need to do. Keep making notes to yourself, things you're noticing, the things you need to explore a little further. You're going to get those invoices and match them to what was actually finally dispensed. You're going to then create analysis and figure out what your profit margin is. And we're going to look at those 10 random audits, and we're going to figure out what your profit was for each of those patients. I'm going to show you a couple examples here of what I mean when I say audit. This is not, oh yeah, that looks fine. That's not what we're doing here. We're going to do a very thorough analysis here. So let me pull that up. Give me one moment to show you this. And I'm going to do this one here. And pull it down for you to see. All right, here is an audit of a contact lens patient. So you can see the screen captures, as I mentioned. And as this analysis went through, we're seeing the charges, we're seeing what was paid by the patient, what was paid by the insurance, the total paid, what the cost of goods are, and what the profit margin is. You can see here a lost opportunity. Final contact lenses were never ordered for this patient when the production cycle was fully analyzed. The doctor had made recommendations for further services, and it had just been dropped for whatever reason. Further details, there's information, screen shares about what was actually on the invoice and what the patient paid. We're going down and looking at insurance payments in this particular case. We're seeing trials ordered, but nothing to the patient at that point. And then we're seeing, here's a lost opportunity. Some lenses were ordered, but perhaps they had been in stock. The question is, are people looking at their stock lenses and utilizing what they already have? That's an opportunity that is often missed. And then again, lost opportunity here where there was a dispense, but then no follow-up and no final order of contacts. So that is an example of the kind of audit I'm expecting you to do. 10 patient production cycles per quarter with notes and analysis. And really digging in, not just looking at a particular field or number or charge, but looking at it as a big picture. A big picture analysis is what we need to be having here. So going back to our presentation, I'm also going to show you a little glasses audit, similar kind of process there. I know our time is running out, but we're going to get there. In fact, I think I'll skip the glasses audit, but it's the same process. Screen captures, really looking across invoices, what was ordered, what was dispensed, what did the doctor recommend, what did the patient pay, if there was insurance, what did the insurance pay. So who's going to do this? Who is going on the hunt? You are all going on the hunt. As I said, this is a team activity. That's going to make it the most valuable, the most enjoyable, the most productive. But I'm going to say this. I would like either the office manager or an owner doctor to do at least the first 2 audits. And the reason I need you to do that is because you're going to have to access that information, as you can imagine, from a number of different places. So even though I want everyone on the team, ideally, from a technician to a dispenser, to be involved in an audit, I understand there's access issues. So you're going to have to make some decisions about who's able to do it. But ultimately, you're going to need to assist the other team members in where to find this information so they don't have to be the ones to figure it out themselves. That's a different kind of treasure hunt, but not the kind that we want everyone to be doing every quarter. And here's the thing, as soon as you have done 1 or 2 yourselves as the management team or ownership team, you'll know the process. Document the process. Do we know about documenting procedures? Yes, we do. So make a list of here's where you're going to find this stuff. Here's how we want you to format it. You saw the one, which was a Word document, actually, with just cut and pasted images with some typed analysis in there. But that's what needs to happen. We're going to have you guys do 2 as a management team or the owner doctor. So you understand the process. And then you're going to assign it to the appropriate people on the team. It might be department team leaders if you have a larger team. As long as they have access, everyone on the team is capable of doing this, you guys. And the more people that are involved, the better it's going to be, the more you're going to find. So that's what I'm going to suggest in terms of who's going to do it. You're going to add everything up here and see what the profit is. You're going to look for the lost revenue, the mistakes, for instance, and kind of see on those 10 audits, where did we end up? Were we at that 25 bucks per patient revenue cycle that I mentioned earlier? Are we more? Are we less? And I should mention that sometimes the errors you find are credits that are due to patients that you missed. And that's okay too. That's still an error that needs to be fixed, although it's not going to increase your production or profit margin. Still needs to be fixed. So in the last minute here, I do just want to show you that I have a little tiny example of a spreadsheet that I'm going to provide to you. It'll be uploaded into your materials and available to you after this presentation. I think Kim said it would be about 30 minutes after we wrap up. It should be available to you there. But just think about what the plan of action is. It's not just discovering the errors and oversights and lost opportunities. Obviously, then, as a team, as you look at your 10 audits together and talk about them and identify those patterns, you're going to come up with a plan of action on how to fix them, how to tighten them up, how to make things more efficient. Sometimes it's not anyone's fault. It is either perhaps a gap in training, or a really inefficient or ineffective system that hasn't been reviewed and fixed. You know, that's what you're looking for. You have to have that plan of action, and you've got to get it done before the next audit, for goodness sakes, or else, you know, there's no point in doing it. So by next audit, 3 months later, you should have addressed any of those patterns that you saw from the prior audit, and you should be that closer to a nice, tight, as close to perfect as you can possibly be as the audits progress. Again, I'm not expecting anyone to be perfect here, you guys, but I think it's also important in an audit where you see that each of those X marks the spot on the map. That could be a different person in the office. So if I'm a dispenser, let's say, and I have a private insurance and I see that there was a $5 copay that I forgot to charge the patient, it's kind of tempting to just be like, oh, well, it's only $5. It's not that big a deal. They bought a pair of really nice progressives, so I'm just going to not collect it and not let them know or not tell them when they pick it up or whatever. But every $5, you know, if you have 5 people across this cycle and each of them decide not to worry about $5, there's our $25, right? For 5 people, $5 each. So yeah, on their own, one by one, a mistake is not a big deal, of course, but as they add up across the patient and across the patient base, they do become pretty significant at that point. So I'm going to just show you guys one last little thing, which is the little spreadsheet that I have available for you to use. We already talked about the focus. Sometimes even just focusing on the audits and knowing that they're occurring on a regular basis will make people a little more attentive to avoiding those little mistakes and opportunities. And we also talked about how often. So remember, about once every quarter, you're going to pull those 10 random patient production cycles and go through your audit process together. Then lastly, I just want to show you this small little tool. You certainly can come up with something yourselves. It's nothing especially fancy, but I thought I'd save you just a little bit of time and show this to you. Here are your 10 audits. You put in the retail charged out, you put in what the patient paid. If there's insurance involved, you can enter that here in your spreadsheet. You put in your material costs after you get your invoices back, and then you put in any errors that you discovered, and that will calculate your profit margin. And you can put some little notes over in the margin if you like, and it also calculate if you had to write anything off. That'll show up here in column H. So this little spreadsheet will be available to you. By all means, feel free to come up with something that's more involved or specific to your particular practice, but I thought I'd at least get you started with something here. And let me move you on back to our slideshow here. And just wrap up our evening with a little wish for some happy hunting. Please let me know how it goes. Seriously, I would love to see your audits. Send me one so I can see what you discovered. I'm excited. All right, we got a few minutes for questions.
Thank you, Bess. So if we have one question here, how much time is it going to take to do these audits?
Yes, the time will range, I think, when you first do them, from about 20 to 30 minutes each. So if you're going to do 10 audits, we're talking about 5 hours ultimately of administrative time. But again, 5 hours, 4 times, that's 20 hours, and that's potentially $50,000 of revenue for the same amount of work and material sold. So I think it's well worth investing that time.
Great, thank you. We have another question. What do you find to be the biggest source of revenue lost or mistakes that offices make?
It's typically in the optical side of things. And that has to do with the fees not being properly invoiced. And then again, on the expense side, the invoices not being accurate or not reflecting what was actually intended to be ordered. So I would say to concentrate on optical first, if you do have, if you're not quite sure where to look.
Good, thank you. We have another question. Is there a good way on how to select those 10 patients quarterly?
Some people will rotate through different elements of the practice. So maybe you would have one that's very focused on optical, like I mentioned, and then perhaps you would move to the contact lens element within the practice. If you do take a decent amount of private insurance, you may select a certain insurance type and do one series of audits that's just with that particular insurance.
Okay, thank you. Another question, what's the percent of treasure that most practices find?
Well, $25. In that particular practice, I believe they were running about $300 per patient for average receipts. So that's 8%.
So 8%.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Using
Thank you.
one I know for sure what the results were right now.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have coming in. So at this time, I'd like to thank you for your very insightful presentation.